I am making this week about 8A firms, and you can learn more about this as you go forward, but it's a big push towards the end of the year, the fiscal year, that I want to help 8A small businesses get a lot of traction. But the tips I provide are never unique to the people I'm providing it to, because it's just a process, and the process can be followed by anybody. And so keep that in mind. So today we're going to be talking about how small businesses, 8A small businesses in particular, can get noticed by federal buyers. One of the things that I think is the biggest challenge with buyers and sellers connecting in the federal market is this complete lack of visibility. I don't believe it requires these presidential initiatives, et cetera. I think buyers and sellers need to find themselves, and they're not. They're like what I call here passing ships in the night, right? In the night, two passing ships, they're near each other and they're passing. And because it's dark, they don't realize that they're passing each other. And when you have passing ships in the federal market, buyers and sellers passing, you're not going to make any sales, right? And as small businesses, as industry, it's our responsibility to get found. When we take responsibility for getting found, then we put ourselves in control of the whole relationship of getting found by the buyers and by the buyers, right? And so one of the tips I put here is that 90% of success, and I've been in sales a long time, and I was taught this in the very early days of sales when I did vacuum cleaners door to door, which makes a lot of sense to the statement that 90% of success is just showing up. Back in the day, right, showing up at the person's door and knocking on the door, 90% of my success happened there because I had the courage to knock on the door and open up. Well, for today's training, we're going to get into this about how can you show up where your buyers are looking. When you show up where they're looking, even whether they're looking at that moment, if you just consistently show up, you're going to have the success that you want. In today's training, we're going to cover down on a lot of stuff. I'm going to go really fast, fire hose pace, but it's really good tactical information. So if you follow, you will get actionable steps that you can walk away from today. So I'm going to cover down on how that LinkedIn is where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my attention today. But LinkedIn is where you can find million plus federal buyers out there. Mark Amtower does a study every year where he talks about how many agencies and buyers are out there. So you could look at that. But there's a ton, right? Over 1 million are out there. I'm going to talk to you, though, about which ones are the active buyers. How do you find the active buyers? Because sometimes there's people on LinkedIn, but not using it. The third thing we're going to cover down is why your profile is really important to this buyer engagement. If they're going to come find you and look at you, you want to make sure that you look compelling enough that they want to engage with you, right? And then we're going to talk about the profile view in general. How does that happen? I want you to understand the mechanics behind it. And then I'm going to end up with showing you what you can do to your LinkedIn profile today to make your company and yourself look like a SME through your profile. So that's what we're going to cover. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training. It's where we teach tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. I wish I knew a lot of what I keep teaching people these days. But since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When you follow a process A to Z, you're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I'm going to teach you today, how to have repeatable, predictable results as it relates to buyer interaction on LinkedIn. If you haven't done so already, do me a favor, put your company name into the chat and your core competency, 2 or 3 words. I've already had multiple federal agency buyer representatives reaching out saying, I'm going to be in the training today, or I might not be able to make it, but I'm going to follow back up. Somebody reached out from the federal government side and said, I'm going to be at every one of them. These are great. I'm going to send them out to the small businesses I work with. And the reason I tell you to put your company name and your core competency into the chat is so that these people can find out who you are, as well as me and my team. We can remember who you are. And then the people who are here today in the community, bouncing back and forth, let us know who you are so that we begin to build our relationship with you. If it makes sense, we reach out and connect. By the way, if you're open to connecting on LinkedIn, say that as well. Last thing is just thank you to the GovCon Chamber of Commerce sustaining members. Without sustaining members, we're not able to put on this training and all the great content that we put out. Our money doesn't come from the government or from large primes. It comes from sustaining members. And we just want to say thank you every single day for your support. Okay, let's dive deep into LinkedIn and really the only place you can find 1 million plus federal buyers, right? There's 930 million people on LinkedIn. And so that changes around the world, but it's a huge number, right? And I want to walk it down to the reality number. inside of the United States, we've got about 200 million people who are on in the USA, right? And put it in perspective, we just have a little bit more than 3 million or 300 million people in the United States. And so that's a lot of people on LinkedIn, but they're not all using it. If you look at the third bullet, you can see that there's 66 million active users on LinkedIn in any given month, right? This is a monthly active user. That's not a lot. Some people just come in once a week or once a month. And so they're not going to see stuff too often. And really, when they come in, what do you count active? 10 minutes? And so what you're really trying to do is to come down and go, well, of the 66 million active users, how many are active in a way that I can begin to build my relationship with them? So I want to talk about federal buyers, right? If there's 66 million Americans active on LinkedIn every month, well, how many are actual federal buyers? And so I'm going to go back and forth between my slides and LinkedIn to show you certain things. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing is I'm just showing up on a blank search page, showing you at the top here, you can see 900 million people on LinkedIn, which is a lot. How many did I say a minute ago? 930. Okay, so 922 million at the moment. So people go on, they come off, there's bots, etc. So then I want to start working it down, right? And let's just look at this from a federal buyer perspective. Let's just say we type in the Army. Here's the Army. If I show the results for the Army, and I don't know if you see it pretty well, but up here, 412,000 people from the Army, one way or another, are in there. Let's try this again. So we'll just keep adding, right? So here's the Navy. Funny, the Navy's always a little different. U.S. Navy, there it is. So if I add in the Navy, and I'm going to add in one more agency, that's another 200,000. And let's just add in HHS, right? People who say they're at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Oops. Come on. I didn't want to do that. I'm going to add them right here, HHS. So if we click there, we add them. And all I'm trying to show you with this page is that, I've got 600,000 federal buyers already. And, there's easily over 200,000, but that's just showing you that there's federal buyers on here. And I don't want to go too far into this because there's a lot going on, but here's a product director down here. Here's an intelligence department head. There's a lot of different people, and I'm only picking 2 or 3 agencies, right? Let's go back here and go to the next page, right? So it's one thing to say that there's people out there. Hey, there's a lot of people on LinkedIn. Well, there's a lot of federal buyers on LinkedIn, right? But how do you find the federal buyers that are active? Here's my first tip for you. So in a second, get ready to write it down. By the way, if you're active on LinkedIn, do me a favor, just put in the chat. Let me know, are you active on a daily, weekly, or less frequently? So daily, weekly, or less frequently. Just let us know how often you are. So when you think about federal buyers and which ones are on LinkedIn, you can pretty much figure it out just by doing that search I did and then look at who's posting. That's how I'm going to show you that they're active. But I wanted to describe, what does it mean when I say that they're active? Why should you care? If you have somebody, a federal buyer who's on LinkedIn, and when I say a federal buyer, I pretty much mean anybody who's in the government. So if I'm trying to sell to HHS, it could be the program office, the contract office, a small business shop. It doesn't matter. It means they're a government employee. That at the moment is a federal buyer. And in sales, that's fine because we're just trying to reach in. But I wanted you to imagine that if they're on LinkedIn and they're active, and I'm going to show you the ones that are active. If they're on LinkedIn and they're active, then what they basically have done is bought a booth at a small business conference, right? And we all get to go to that conference and they've got a booth. And all we're doing is walking by their table. We might stop and engage with them. Hey, how you doing? Pull a flyer off, right? And that's what LinkedIn is basically giving you that same networking capability over and over and over again. And you don't have to go to a conference to do this kind of engagement. So let's go see who's active, an example of who's active. And I want you to write this tip down, because this is how you should be building kind of your framework. By the way, if you don't own Sales Navigator, pay for it. I hear people sometimes say things like, I'll get something when I can afford it. Well, I could point to things that people waste a lot of money on: cigarettes, Starbucks, lunches, dinners, eating out. But if you saved a little teeny money, you can pay for Sales Navigator, which gives you a lot more functionality. What I want to show you here is I'm going to go into a current company, right? And I'm going to pick a couple of those like I did a minute ago. So I'm going to say, I want to look at the Army. Let's say Homeland Security. Homeland Security. Oh, it's right there. Let's just take those two. Okay. So if you noticed over here, now I have 460,000 results. I got a lot of people over there. And you have to keep doing this, by the way. Don't ever let anybody wow you with big numbers. The idea is you want to find the 10 to 20 numbers or people that really matter to you. But it starts with millions, then hundreds of thousands, and works its way down. But so let's come down here to this spotlight. And so this is not a massive LinkedIn tour, but all I did is said, show me anybody who's on LinkedIn in the Army and Homeland Security. Now I'm saying, show me any of those who have posted in the last 30 days on LinkedIn. And to me, I'm using that as a statistic to say that they're active on LinkedIn. And so here I can see that there's 8,000 results. And from here, you can begin to start figuring it out. Like right here, this is, say I'm in HR just because this person popped up. I might come over to the current job title and just type in, I might not just type in human and see what happens. Okay, so I typed in human. That's all I did, right? And imagine if I'm trying to pay attention to HR solutions. I sell HR services, et cetera. All I said, and I want to remind you, I chose the companies that I wanted to be in, and I would never do Army and Homeland Security, right? I do many, many different armies together. And then down below, I said I wanted to see anybody in the Army and Homeland Security who's posted in the last 30 days. And then the third thing I said is show me around my core competency. If I was in cybersecurity, I would put it here. If I was in logistics, I would put that there. You're not going to find somebody with a job title of painting, but who does manage painting? Is it facility managers, logistics? But I said human resource. And so now when I come over here, I can see all these people who are active. It's 309 people. It took me less than 5 minutes to find 309 people who potentially are folks I can begin to build a relationship with. And look at these titles, right? Chief Human HR, Deputy Chief HR, Chief HR. These are people who are worth following. What are they saying on LinkedIn? How can I engage them? But if they're on LinkedIn, I can start getting visible. So let me pause there, because the whole purpose of this was just to show you a quick way to see who's active on LinkedIn. So let's go to this next slide, right? Why is your profile vital to federal buyer engagement? So I showed you first how to find some folks out there, but it's also really important. And what I'm trying to teach today is how your profile should be set up in a way that when you reach out to those HR chiefs, they're going to find they're going to find a reason to connect with you. They're going to want to talk with you. So the first thing I said here is that people buy from people. They don't buy from companies. They're going to buy from you. That's why we have capture managers and business developers. That's why we encourage small business owners to get out there and build relationships, right? I get it's hard until you learn the process, but once you follow people like me and you learn the process, it gets a little easier, just like everything does with experience. But you're building a relationship, you to that other person, to the buyer, not the Army to my company, right? Those two don't do anything. Jane and Neil, John and Neil, we are the ones who build a relationship. We are the ones who sell and buy from each other, right? Even though you got a proposal and all that stuff, it starts with people buying from people. And so when you have a good profile and when you are out there, you're putting a good face to your company, you're putting a face to your company. No one really cares about your what goes on with your company. They care what goes on with the people in your company. If you did this one little exercise and looked at your profile, looked at your company page, you would always find you have way more followers than your company does. Because people can see you, they can know and like you. They can't do any of that with your company. They just choose to follow it because really that's what we're taught. And so when you put a face to your company, you're being personable. You're turning your company into a human, a person I can reach out to. The next thing to pay attention is that your profile is really vital to getting your company attraction from the buyers. For example, when you show up in search results, which I'll show you in a second, your profile needs to be compelling enough that they want to come out of the search results and click through and come look at your profile. Imagine Google, if you search for plumbers and you look at something's going to make you click. Well, our LinkedIn profile is the same way. We want to get federal buyers to click on our profile. And then I'm going to show you this other one at the same time. Your profile gets viewed, right? And so what I'm saying here is that when somebody looks at your profile, you want to make sure your profile looks good enough that they want to keep talking with you. And I don't mean literally comb your hair. I mean comb your profile's hair. Make your profile squared away. And I'm going to show you how to do that as we come down to some of these profile tips down here. But let me just show you how you show up in the results. So every week, you can find out how many times you have showed up in the search results of LinkedIn. And so for me, I've showed up this week in 930 search results, right? Search appearances. That means somebody searched on the term PhD and somehow I showed up. I don't know how, and that's an odd one, right? But executive coach, right? That's my world. PhD, not my world, but executive coach, they come here. Market strategist, when they're searching for those two terms, I do want to be in there. And I'm hoping it's federal, small businesses, things like that, who are finding me, right? But the idea is if they show up here, if I show up in one of these searches, I want to be one of the people they click on and say, well, let me go learn more. Imagine somebody searched for executive coach. And I haven't clicked on this before, but let me do it myself right now. So if I click on a search, right, I see these three people. I'm seeing CEO, executive coach. Really, I just look here. So executive coach at the university, no. None of those are catching my eye. And what I'm really actually looking for is something that pulls me in: leadership development, inclusive leader. This one, collaborating with founders, seeking to disrupt the status quo. She caught my attention. I'm going to click on it, right? And that's the idea of what I'm saying, is that you want to make sure that when somebody is doing a search like that, that you're going to compel them to click on your profile. All right, let's look at this other way. So I get viewed. So in the last 90 days, my profile's been viewed 4,000 times. And so what this means is somebody actually came to my profile and looked at it. And however, I don't know how they got there. And I'm going to tell you in a minute. Let me rephrase that. I don't know specifically how they got there, but I know how people can get to my profile. But my point is, your profile view is vital because you come up in search results and you want to get selected. And people, for whatever reason, find your profile and click on it and they come to you. And so your profile is that representation of you and your company, and you need to look good. And remember that example I said a second ago is that you are you're the face of the company, but it's also like a booth at a conference, right? So it's the same thing when you're walking by and you see federal buyers, that's looking at their profiles. And when they're looking at you, it's kind of like you have a booth at a conference and they're walking by and you want to stop them in that row as they're walking down the row and they're seeing all these tables and yours is one. You want your LinkedIn profile or your booth table to look good enough that they go, let me stop and learn more, right? So let's go on to the next one here because we're just cruising in time and I want to make sure I give you all the tips. So I'm talking about how your profile gets found and people come in. So here, let's just talk about an expansion on understanding that profile and understanding the profile views. Profile views are really important because if you see federal buyers, you're going to click on them and go learn about them and figure out how can I get into that agency and how can I sell? Well, buyers and teammates do the same thing to you, right? They're looking at your profile. And so you want to make sure you're increasing the visibility so more buyers, more teammates can see you for what you want to be seen for. If you're cybersecurity, you want to be seen for that. So let's talk about this. Another example. I just want to drive this home. What are profile views? Profile views, you should really think of them as somebody walking by and checking out your booth table at a conference, right? You're at a conference, you paid $200 for a booth and a table, and they're walking by. You want them to stop long enough to look, right? It doesn't have to be more than 5 seconds. If they look, then you have more stuff that tries to pull them in longer than 5 seconds, pull them into a conversation. That's a different training. But here, we're just trying to get them to stop. And a profile view is literally that. They're walking by, they turn their head to the left, they see your booth, and they say, well, let me walk up and read a couple of more things about it. And so that's that 5-second world. I want to talk about what inspires somebody to click on a link like I just did with that lady I showed you a minute ago with executive coach, right? What inspires somebody to click on a link to want to view your profile? It really is 2 things only, right? Anything beyond that is not actually the motivation to click on the profile and view it. It literally is the profile view. But there's 2 things that happen somewhere else that pulls people to your profile. The first thing is your name. And the second thing is your headline, right? Here's what we do. Government contracting is not a Secret, it's just a process, right? That's part of my headline, and I'm going to show you in a second. But I really want to stress this, right? Your name should just be your first name and your last name. And I got a lot of friends who have a lot of extra stuff on there, but I'm telling you, we users of social media don't like all that extra stuff before and after your name, because when we're looking at it in certain spots, it just crowds it. But when it's just your name, that's fine. If you can't compel us to look at your profile from your headline, then you're just trying to crowd too much information in there. So my advice to you is only have your first name and your last name. And this is really important. Stop putting your formal name. This is not a legal document. This is social media. When you put a formal name like James, but you actually go by Jim, you're creating friction in the relationship right from the start. I call you, I try to connect, say, James, I feel like an idiot. You feel like I don't know who you are because I didn't call you Jim. Well, of course I don't know who you are. It's the first time I'm contacting you. That's fine if the federal buyer decides to do it, but you want to be found by as many people who can, right? Who potentially want to buy from you. So have them call you right from the start, your nickname, that name that is Jim, not James. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't have to go into it too much. Your headline, this one's really important. I'll go show you some in a minute. But your headline is this statement. It's right now what a lot of people do is they just have their job title, like, business developer or president and CEO. They just have their job titles right under their name. So it doesn't compel me to click on the link to learn more about you. You need to put something there, because the only thing that is visible somewhere else in search, for example, is your name and your headline. And you want them to see something about your company. So your headline, this framework you can follow. I help these people this way in order to get this results. If you lay out a headline like that, then that's going to compel people to click on your profile if they're looking for a company like you. For example, if you do cybersecurity and you say something along the lines, they're going to go, oh, great, a cyber firm. Let me go check them out more. So let's talk about where they result, and then I'm going to show you a lot of those tips that I just said. So when I say where do they originate, what I mean is where are the other people when your profile views are originating? Where are they clicking on your name to come look at your profile? And it's happening in three places, right? It happens in search results, which I already showed you. It happens in engagement, which I'm going to show you in a second. And then it also happens in profile views, because profile views lead to profile views, lead to profile views. What it means is if I look at your profile and you see it, you might go, let me go see who that Neil guy is. And it's the same thing with me. Every day I look at my who's viewed my profiles, yes, in the last 24 hours. And I go check out their profile if they're in the GovCon space, right? Let me go see who this person is. And I'll show you that as well. So let me show you this really quick. So here I said one of the places you can get engagement is, profile views is engagement. So let's say I'm going to go view your profile. Here's my post. I did a post today about the National Guard. And here's a bunch of people who've engaged, right? And so I'm going to click on it. And this is the first thing I was trying to say is like, look, there's the name and then there's a headline. Government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. We help small businesses, right? I'm trying to say right from the beginning. Coming down, no offense to Joshua, I appreciate you being able to use them, but here it's a title, right? But Joshua probably does so much more for us. I'd like to see what he does. Can he help small businesses get financing? That'd be cool. I bet you he does, right? And that's what I want to know. Okay, so this is one way. If I come down and I'm looking at stuff, I can see the different headlines. Look at this one, delivering M365 and SharePoint solutions in support of digital transformation for federal agencies, right? That makes me want to click on the profile and go look. And so that's one place is in engagements. The other place, profile views, are like this. I told you a lot of people come view. So in the past 90 days, and I might be able to, just shrink this down. In the past 14 days, I've had 2,000 views. And so I can start coming through here and seeing. So some of these people are friends of mine, ours, right? They're in our community. And in others, I might not know who they are. So Director of Government Solutions. So as I'm looking, so a lot of these people, but right here, Chief Information of Hospitals. I don't know what that is. Might make me want to go look at who they are, right? And so these are examples of how you can get out there and view. I want to give you this last tip because I'm running out of time, but this is really important on, this is another thing to write down. It's 4 steps to making your profile demonstrate that you and your company are subject matter experts when somebody is looking at your profile. So remember, I just clicked on Hunter's profile and I went to her or her name, and I went to her profile. So the first thing is you're trying to get me to look at your profile. When I come to your profile in 4 steps, it can happen within 2 seconds. 4 steps, people are going to make a judgment on whether to keep looking at your profile. So over here, the first thing they do is look at your banner, right? And so here I say coaching for government contractors. If that's who you are and you're looking, it makes you come down further. So imagine if it says we do acquisition support services, we do SharePoint services, whatever, something up there other than a blank banner. So that gives them confidence that they clicked on my profile. Hey, he does look like the person I thought he was. This picture here, just make sure it's professional, not an arm around somebody else. I don't need to go a lot into that. Oh, I forgot to renumber some of these, but this one here, this second number one, is just making sure you have some information here, because this gives them a little bit of confidence. What also shows up on my profile, if you were looking, is how many connections we have in common. That gives people a boost of confidence. And the last tip that I really wanted to stress here is your profile should have a featured section. It's really easy to turn on. And when you turn on your featured section, I recommend you have 3 things in it, minimum. You can have other stuff, but your capability statement, a case study, and if you've done any work at all in the space that you're selling, then you can write a case study, even if it's a 1-page case study that says, here was the challenge, here was our approach, here was the outcome, right? That's a case study. So a case study in there. And by the way, I showed you Hunter's profile. Go look at her profile. She has a really good featured section. And then an ebook. I put down an ebook. That could be 5 pages. Just sticking with Hunter for 1 second. The top 10 tips for migrating to SharePoint Online. And every page is a different tip, and it can be big text and an image or something, right? It doesn't have to be a white paper and tons of text, but you're the expert on something. Write a quick little mini ebook. I've done something like that there, where I said, here's strategic plans. Here's 3 ebooks we've done. And then over here is here's training that I've done before. So what I want you to remember from today's training, and I know it's a fire hose, so go back and watch it again, but federal buyers are on LinkedIn, right? And they use LinkedIn the same as the rest of us on social media. They're just trying to do their research for their job the same way you're doing it. And so it's the last thing to remember here is that it's your job to get noticed. It's not the buyer's job to find you. Yes, of course, it's their job, but it's our responsibility to make it as easy as possible for them. And if you follow the tips that I shared today, if you slow it down and write them down and do them, you can do them in 1 day. And you can start attracting buyers tomorrow, right? And for everybody, remember, government contracting and engagement on LinkedIn, profile views, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.